admit that I am a classical philologist with some interest in paleography and in papyrology. Anyway, the title I've chosen for today's presentation that will follow a quite traditional and philological approach to paleography recalls the famous Aperçus de paléographie homérique by William Lameere. This pioneering work aimed to present for the first time a selection of Homeric papyri, analyzed for what concerned paleographical features and book organization among rolls and tomoi. Following this model, in 2011, Guglielmo Cavallo and Lucio Del Corso wrote a new and remarkable contribute about Homeric papyri. In this work, they went beyond the simple paleography, revealing new precious elements devoted to investigate the book typology, the hands, and the final usage of ancient volumina and codices. First of all, it seemed necessary to specify the reason for which Demosthenes will be the object of the present enquiry. I would like to begin showing you the famous sculpture of Demosthenes carved by Polyaeuctos. In particular, as you can see, there is a detail that arouses our attention. The papyrus roll that Demosthenes keeps in his hand could be tentatively and fascinatingly interpreted as a symbol of his intellectual profile and as a clear connotation of his literary status since 3rd century BC. Unfortunately, the presence of a papyrus roll wasn't original, but was a false addiction of a later restore. Even if we have to accept this detail as a forgery, I would like to start from this image of an ancient Demosthenic book, trying to investigate its real feature in Hellenistic, Roman, and early Byzantine period. For large part of antiquity, in fact, Demosthenes was the rhetor par excellence, in the same way as Homer was perceived as the poetess for antonomasia. As known, Homer is the first better-known author of Greek literature, thanks to papyri and parchment. But is noteworthy that the second better-known author is Demosthenes. Nowadays, we have noticed of more than 200 papyri, a figure continuously increasing. The finding big quantity suggests and imposes for the future a new exam of all Demosthenic fragments that can reveal interesting data about books' circulation. However, before going beyond, I have to define the unavoidable limits of this paper. In the time granted to me, I will review only a sample of papyri and parchment that contain passages from Demosthenes' De Corona. This is not a random choice. In fact, as you probably know, De Corona was a masterpiece in antiquity. The sort of apology of more than 30 years spent to defend Greek freedom was considered the best Demosthenes oration. It is testified by 29 papyri, and so it's the best known work in prose of Greek classical literature. As shown in the picture, they come from different areas in Egypt, and the greatest part, as usual, comes from Oxyrhynchus. Looking at the chronological distribution, the Corona fragments cover a wide time frame, from 1st century BC to 5th century AD, with peaks in the 2nd and in the 3rd century AD. Our enquiry that will follow a chronological criterion aims to propose a quick illustration of the most relevant items that allow us some brief reflection about scribes, book typologies, and other significant aspects concerned to material philology. In a classification attempt, I checked the dating proposed in each editio princeps, using the nomenclature practiced by paleographers and papyrologists. And finally, I tried to catalog the items according to that group established by Guglielmo Cavallo, who recognized 4 classes of book hands based on letters morphology accuracy and on ductus speed. The first papyrus from which I would like to start my exposition is Papiro Milano Vogliano 12. It is written in a beautiful round capital, accurate and regular, with a slow ductus and an airy text organization. The hand is to be compared with the famous P. Lit 134. On this base, it is to be referred to the 1st century BC, and perhaps to the first half. It's noteworthy because Papiro Milano Vogliano 12 is the oldest witness of the Corona, as well as one of the most ancient papyri found in Egypt. This aspect gives us essential information about the success and the circulation of our orator. The scarcity of evidences from the Hellenistic period, combined with the almost complete absence in Aristotle's rhetoric, led Engelbert Rerup to believe that Demosthenes had a very limited success in Upper Hellenism. In fact, he would have suffered the strong criticism of peripatetic and Philo-Macedonian erudite circles. Nowadays, their Rerup reconstruction could be reconsidered thanks to the papyrological evidences. Paleographical re-exam reveals that, in addition to Papiro Milano Vogliano 12, there are at least 4 papyri datable from the 2nd century BC to the beginning of the 1st century AD. So it seems difficult to question the role, rhetorical and political, that the figure of Demosthenes starts having shortly the day after his death. P.Ryl 59, the second witness of our review, is a meaningful fragmentary sheet of papyrus. The writing is along fibers on both sides, and there are not collages. Only a small material damage reveals us which face is the verso. The Corona incipit is written at least 6 times on the recto. It's clearly a writing exercise, and the most interesting fact is that there's not in use a literary writing, but a chancery style that strictly recalls the well-known capital of Subaziano Aquila. But this small fragment reveals another reason of interest. On the verso, we can read the traces of verse 130 of Iliad. This is another exercise, and it's written in a chancery majuscule with a singular leftward slant that recalls the one in use under Hadrian's reign. As a consequence, the papyrus could be dated to the middle of the 2nd century AD. So, P.Ryl 59 shows us 2 important points. 2 different chancery styles were in use during the 2nd century AD. Besides, in the office and bureaucratic environment, a very clever hand could manage 2 different chancery styles and improved his abilities not using documentary text, but literary sentences, not casually taken from the most read poet, Homer, and the most read prose writer, Demosthenes. The third example is P.Hound 5, written by the same hand of another De Corona witness, P. Oslo 10 plus P.Ryl 45. In both cases, the Demosthenic text was copied on the back of a recycled roll in an inelegant semi-formal round. The first hypothesis is that the 2 papyri were part of the same roll. In contrast, the bibliological analysis of the 2 findings reveals that the mise en colonne is clearly 2 different. If we consider that the sections of De Corona that they report are close to each other, it becomes unlikely to believe that such a variation in the layout could be admitted at such a short distance in the same row. Therefore, P.Oxy and P.Oslo 10 plus P.Ryl 45 represent two different editions, however written by the same hand, which reuse the same long documentary papyrus on verso. Furthermore, after the last preserved column, we can see a blank space, probably the roll final agraphon. But we are not at the end of the oration. This proves that this long text could be organized in two different tomoi. The fourth witness I want to consider is P.Ant 27. The sheet comes from an elegant parchment codex with wide margins and an accurate ruling. Some graphical features led me to believe that the writing of P.Ant 27 could be included in the stylistic class of the Alexandrian Magus school. This witness could testify the primary phase of this canon development. It could be referred to the late 2nd century AD or to the beginning of the 3rd. The high chronological attribution of this codex should not surprise. These items come from Antinopolis, a Roman settlement on the Nile east coast. In this site, for what concerns the earliest decades of the city, have been found more codices than rolls, and the great part of them is made up of parchment, while, on the other hand, papyrus is almost rare. If we remind the famous passages of Martial about codices, and if we reconsider the most ancient Latin codices, Exempli Gratia de Palimpsest contained in Palatinus Latinus 24, dated by Cavallo between 159 and 235 AD, it's clear how, at least since the end of the 2nd century, the Codex was a well-established book form. The Egyptian witnesses, on the other hand, the only one that allows statistical surveys, show an almost different picture, with poorer quality, especially on papyrus codex, and uncertainty in inquiry organization. These divergences have often been interpreted in a diachronic and teleological sense, in an attempt to trace a progressive technological evolution of the codex, starting from its first most elementary and pedestrian attempts, toward more refined and structured realizations. On the contrary, if we consider Latin word, where wooden tablets were a common support, at least from the Republican period, we can evaluate qualitative divergences in a synchronic sense. Egypt, in fact, was a periphery, a geographical periphery, but also a book production periphery. Only slowly and in originally rudimentary way, it incorporated and imitated the book new technology. One of the most diffuse writings between the second half of the 2nd century and the first half of the 3rd is the so-called severe style, or strenger Stil. But apart from this style, there are many papyri which writings imitate severe style. An interesting example is Papiro della Società Italiana 1395. It comes from a papyrus codex written by an inelegant hand, referable to the middle of the 3rd century AD. At the end of a partial survey among papyri coming from Oxyrhynchus, I noted that the same hand wrote Papiro della Società Italiana Congresso 13, a roll fragment that reported passages from Demosthenes on the false embassy. P.Oxy 4569, a single quire papyrus codex that reports passages from on the false embassy, and Papiro della Società Italiana 1382, a roll fragment that reports Odysseus, book 16th. So this hand, not included among the ones identified by William Johnson, give us the clear evidence that in the Ossirinkite area in the 3rd century AD, the same scribe managed both rolls and codices. Given the fact that the 19th oration is copied twice on 2 different codices, it seems likely that these books, without a calligraphic script and with the common pure features of the most ancient papyrus codices, were written by a professional scribe that prepared cheap edition for the book market. For a masterpiece like De Corona, it's obvious to find rolls written in one of the most beautiful and impressive Greek scripts of antiquity, biblical majuscule. A good example is offered by P.Oxy 25. This fragment is to be dated to the 4th century AD, when the canon shows the maximum purity. Looking in detail in the upper blank space is written key stigma, probably a column number. So the only survived column is the number 606. Undoubtedly, this number ran over several rows. This information is precious because it reveals us the existence of an high-level edition of Demosthenes, perhaps opera omnia, organized in tomoi and produced in a librarian atelier. Lastly, we have to analyze P.Ryl 58. The problem, the doubts, and the question raised by this almost complete papyrus squire are greater than the answers it can offer. The text is written by a skilled hand and resembles the inclined ogival majuscule, and could be dated to the 5th century AD. As we can note from this quaternion prospectus, the oration text is not continuous, but it breaks off at the end of each page, not caring for period, sentences, and word division. The paragraph order is correct, but the gaps that can be reconstructed do not have a fixed extension. The hypothesis of sheets falling is not sustainable, since the quaternion is complete and moreover the sheets are numbered from 1 to 11, figures unusually low at the end of a very long work, such as De Corona. On the last written page, there is a subscription with the double title of the oration and a closing formula. The fact that the first page remains unwritten confirms that this squire would never have been part of a complete codex containing all the oration text. So, what is this curious specimen, or if you want, what is this real monstrum? And the editor Princeps thought it was a rhetorical exercise. In my opinion, a different reconstruction is possible. P.Ryl 58 was copied from a very damaged Antigraphus, probably from single sheets of an old Codex Disligatus. The scribe, probably a scholar, found this old text, read the final subscription, and understanding the importance of this text, prepared a copy with philological cares. P.Ryl 58 is the latest known ancient De Corona witness. For 3 centuries, each kind of testimonium will be absent. We have to attend the half of the 9th century to find all the oldest medieval manuscript, Monachensis Graecus 485, and then the admirable Parisinus Graecus 2934. Given these points, after our short re-examination of particular and instructive ancient witnesses, it's time to conclude, trying to depict a more general scenario. Demosthenic papyri, with their conspicuous number and in virtue of their good chronological and geographical distribution, represent a good database that can help us to reconstruct a less dark overview. Looking at the typologies of De Corona books and edition, as has been noted, we have a majority of good quality rolls and codices, and at times, products of high quality too, written by skilled hands, more or less calligraphic. This fact could be tentatively explained considering where Demosthenic oration were copied, studied, and imitated. The greatest part of Demosthenes' success is due to his being a very frequently read school author. As we have seen, this is not the only milieu in which he was read, just thinking of P.Ryl 59, written in chancery style. However, undoubtedly, as largely testified by the rich and direct and exegetic tradition, Demosthenes was one of the most frequently studied classical prose writers in rhetorical school during Roman period. So not school environment in general, but the rhetorical one, that is to say, to the higher level of ancient cursus studiorum. In conclusion, in the light of all these points, I would like to express simple and personal considerations about paleography and its precious contribute to Altertumswissenschaft. What is the role of paleography in our disciplines? We have to admit that nowadays paleography couldn't be the simple description of letter shape and writing. It represents the indispensable starting point, but we have to go further. The analysis of different writing, the definition of an even more precise classification, the examination of bibliological and codicological evidences, the reunion of fragments of the same edition, or the identification of scribes' hand are all valuable clues of material philology that enable us to understand and acknowledge the reproduction and the conservation of a successful classical author such as Demosthenes. Thank you.